experience, continuing our coverage of the 2018 fantasy baseball season. Today, the biggest early ADP movers, some busts, some sleepers from the back end of your draft that you can take, and hopefully they'll help you win. But I mean, I won't be giving them to you. Garion Thorne will be giving them to you because you know baseball better than I do.
It's a low bar.
Yes, it is a very low bar.
You say in 2018.
You say it's low, but I have these conversations with real casual baseball fans. They have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, apparently baseball's a dying sport, so if you listen to anyone, well, Rob Manfred specifically, it's a dying sport.
It's dying. That's why we need the pitch clock.
People hate it. Only 60-year-olds watch baseball,
We need to speed up the game by 3 minutes. That's the cutting edge.
It doesn't matter at all.
No. And, I mean, listen, the networks like when it's
There's
long.
also
You can
so
sell more
much money.
advertising.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Television networks love baseball, which is really all that matters.
Hey, it's 450 free hours.
Each team got $50 million 2 seasons ago from the television deal.
And how much did the Marlins actually spend on their team?
I think their payroll right now is lower than that bonus.
Just printing money then.
Yeah, so
printing money. No wonder Jeter got involved.
It's all fine. Yeah.
All right.
Their fans hate him, but they don't have any fans anyway.
Yeah, big
so
deal.
Who cares?
You get all your TV money, you're good to go. And you get some nice, every 8 years they're going to be really good because they trade away all their good players for the crappy players now, and they have developing prospects.
Yeah, but they start the clock so early on some of these guys because they've got no one to play at the major league level. So by the time they're 23, they trade them away. Realistically, Christian Yelich is, and I guess they tried for a minute and a half to be no, you're the face of the franchise. We'll build around you, and it's pretty easy to see through that. So he got his trade too. But yeah, I don't know. Their strategy is really beyond analysis. So. It is what it is. Makes for interesting fantasy baseball circumstances.
This is true. Just put some playing time in and boom, there's your NL-only 14-team league guy.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's talk about some ADP risers. Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ tweeted these out. The 5 biggest movers in terms of ADP, and we're just past Valentine's Day. So
People are actually starting to do drafts.
Drafts, yeah. So in a month's time, these are going to be flipped up some more. We'll try to keep on top of the trends of guys that are rising, some guys that are falling, but even right now, like you mentioned, the biggest fallers are guys that haven't signed with teams yet.
Yeah, and that's been maybe one of the bigger storylines in fantasy baseball so far this year. It's some notable guys who haven't signed yet. We're starting to see the lower tiers of pitchers starting to get some deals. I mean, Andrew Kashner just signed. Jaime Garcia just signed. So it seems like some of the dominoes are starting to fall. Moustakas.
Where did Kashner go?
Baltimore.
All right, and yeah. I saw Jaime Garcia signed, and the only reason I knew that is because our good friend Tim texted me right away. Loves the signing, loves Jaime Garcia, says he could contend for the AL Cy Young.
Tim is the exact demographic, I think, for Jaime Garcia. Just worship. I also do like Jaime Garcia. Some interesting ground ball and swinging strike rate numbers for the second half. But Kashner...
Is Jaime Garcia better than any of the 5 pitchers the Jays already have? No, he's probably the answer.
He's their 5
garbage.
guy. I mean,
40?
Arguably, they only had 4 starters. That's why they signed him. I mean, they were trying to kind of transitioning Joe Biagini into a starter's role, which, I mean, he had a nice month last season where he was sort of fantasy viable. Barrels per plate appearance percentage was kind of interesting with him because he's such an extreme ground ball pitcher, but I think they prefer having him in a swingman sort of capacity. But yeah, Jaime Garcia, Andrew Kashner. I think Kashner had the lowest qualified K per 9 of any starter last season. These guys aren't really moving the radar that much.
Well, I mean, even with someone like Jaime Garcia, you sign him so he can eat innings, but isn't he always hurt?
He's been banged up a little bit, yeah.
You mean always banged up?
He was fine last season.
All right, great. So let's take the sample of the last 10 seasons.
To be fair, though, how old do you think Jaime Garcia is?
I'm going to say 31.
He's exactly 31. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
He seems like he's older, though. I kind of thought
he's
he's
probably been around for 10 years.
Yeah, he was on those St. Louis Cardinal championship contending teams. Well, they did win one, so. World Series champion. Championship experience, Pat.
You can never have too much championship experience. All right, let's get into some of these guys. The first one is Ronald Acuna, who I'm guessing is rising in the ADP so people can think they're real clever when they name their team names Acuna Matata.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a thing for a while,
yeah,
I guess.
Don't do that, by the way.
Don't do that. Be clever.
That is the Eric O'Neill approach to naming your team.
Never use the first pun you think of for your team name, because that's probably the most obvious one. Look, I can't... This is the problem with ever saying Acuna doesn't deserve to be drafted this highly, because he might.
He's gone from 135 in ADP up to 114.
Yeah, I just think, for me personally, it's getting too rich for my blood. I can understand why you'd want to take the risk. I could see when you're doing percentage-based projections, I could see him like at his 80th or 90th percentile projection being someone who returns that value. But as soon as you start getting that high into those projections...
Well, I mean, if he returns like 80, 90 percentile value, isn't he like a top 10 player?
For him, I don't know if he gets as high as top 10 because there are some playing time concerns as well. He's got his Super 2 status, so he's not going to start the year with Atlanta. Atlanta's going to play this smart. You'll probably see him in the middle of April, which, I mean, when it really breaks down, that's only like 16, 17 games, but that's still...
You can find fillers. Don't worry
80,
about that.
85 plate appearances. You can find fillers. I just would start to question, are we getting this excited about Acuna because we've seen this with the recent trend of top 5 prospects generally exceeding at the upper levels very early on? Or are we doing this because we actually feel Acuna is a very, very talented prospect? And he obviously is. The guy has hit at every single level he's played at. I just feel like the helium's getting a little too high for me.
What's the upside? Power and speed?
Power and speed. He ticks every box.
So he's Carlos Gonzalez from 10 years ago?
Pretty much, without the ballpark. But,
it's funny because I remember the first year Carlos Gonzalez came up the second half of the season with Colorado and like lit September on fire. And I was the guy who reached on him the next year. And by reach, it was like I took him in the 9th round and he turned out to be like a top 25 player. If he gets playing time for, let's say, 90% of the year, could he do it?
Probably. But again, this is, I think, you kind of spelled out the difference here between 10 years ago and now in fantasy baseball, which is I don't think we were as in tune to these types of prospects 10 years ago. And you would never have to pay this type of premium for a prospect in his rookie season. I mean, a top 100 pick,
that's 114.
It's really expensive.
114.
In a 15-man league, that's your 7th round selection. That's not crazy necessarily, but there's still such value to be mined in that player 100 to player 125 tier. Again, I think there's a little too much. There's a little too much mystery. There's a few too many question marks for me to want to invest at that particular price point. And the problem too is that's not going to I don't think that plateaus at any point unless he comes out and has a terrible spring training. I think that's a number that you're going to see keep rising because people like to see the best in prospects. They never want to see the negatives. They never want to look at the possible downsides. I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I'm not saying he doesn't have a chance to be great. I just feel like there's a little too much risk baked into that current ADP.
All right, so his Braves teammate is also on the rise from 147 to 133. Ozzie Albies. Albie, the racist dragon. He's up, and he plays shortstop.
I was kind of hoping that the Acuna sort of mass media attention would draw a little bit away from Albies and make people forget that Albies has also been a top 20 prospect his entire career. Unfortunately, that apparently has not happened. I do like Albies, though. I think it's a little bit cheaper. He doesn't quite have the power of his teammate, but the speed might be a little bit better. I mean, Steamer has him right now projected around 21 stolen bases for 600 plate appearances.
Good from a shortstop who's going late.
Exactly. I don't see why he doesn't get to that level. The average was there last season. He doesn't strike out a lot. It wasn't a major sample at the major league level, but still, when you're dealing with these small samples, you start looking for tendencies for batting average, and he profiles like a player who's going to hit 290. So I think even when you start breaking down who he could be and what molds he fits into, he kind of seems like if he's someone who's going to steal 20 bases, hit 290, and play shortstop, second base, you automatically start thinking, okay, he's like a slap hitter. But you start looking at his ground ball to fly ball ratio. His fly ball rate was up around 40%, so he does have that potential to 15, 16, 17 home runs. And he's a switch hitter, so he has no bad split. But specifically, as we talked about the last time I was here, when you're going to SunTrust Park and you have the ability to possibly, let's say, project him at 200 to 225 plate appearances as a left-handed hitter at SunTrust. Left-handed hitters do amazing things at SunTrust Field. So I think there's a lot working in his advantage. I like the fact he has no negative splits.
Is he going to be hitting at the top of the lineup?
Should be. Last season,
so the runs will be up, steals will be up, you'll get decent power.
I think there's a lot of boxes you could check here, and I think he's comparable to Acuna, and I think you're getting him at the value.
Okay, so you like the value at 133 over Acuna at 114.
Yeah, I do. And again, I don't think it stops at 114 for Acuna.
Okay, you think that's going to continue to rise?
Yeah.
But it won't for Albies?
I don't think there's quite the level of excitement around Albies. He's not, because
who's your middle tier shortstop right now? That would be probably going in the same range.
Well, I mean, it's funny. Trevor Story's kind of going in that same range. And Trevor Story is like the opposite of both these guys. He is
what a story,
a
Gary.
massive question mark in terms of playing time. He's a massive question mark in terms of batting average because of that exceedingly high strikeout rate. But he's also someone who could very well hit 30 home runs with 15 to 20 stolen bases. So even when I look at someone like Story versus someone like Acuna, Acuna might be safer if you were just to say, hey, let's assume both these guys get 625 plate appearances.
Are we talking about Acuna or Albies?
Acuna right now.
Okay.
I think Acuna, if you can lock him in at 625 plate appearances, I would also definitely take him above Story. But Story is someone who's got two years of Major League experience. He has definite Major League power. He's got a great ballpark. I don't want to say the lineup's better because their adjusted stats are terrible, but with that ballpark, their lineup's better. So he's someone who I'm even thinking like, look, if someone's going to reach up and take Acuna at 105, 100, I'm okay with sitting back here. And if I really want to take a shortstop in that tier, I can wait on Albies. I can wait on Trevor Story. So I think there are other options at that tier that also make me kind of shy away from a guy like Acuna.
All right, Evan Gattis is moving up the charts from 159 to 141. Is there like a sudden influx of like, oh man, Evan Gattis is great, or is he just someone you get for home runs?
I mean, the problem with Evan Gattis,
not everyday play.
And I guess some people have seemed to think this is going to be rectified this season. I know there was a report that came out that he was going to be their primary designated hitter this season, but you start looking at all the players they have. I mean, does that mean Marwin Gonzalez is not going to play every day? Like, I don't see how they could ever say he's going to be our primary DH. Maybe they start transitioning Brian McCann out a little bit. I mean, he's definitely got a lot of wear and tear on those legs. I assume they think they're going to have another extended playoff run where...
Sure, but it's not like Gattis is a good catcher.
No, but I think...
And McCann, I don't know if he's still, like, really good. I assume he's...
Great at enforcing the unwritten rules of baseball.
Well, I mean,
so that's what you want from your catcher.
I mean, it's great leadership from behind the plate. But Evan Gattis has never been a good defensive catcher.
Not a good defensive catcher, no. But I think if you can... It's risk-reward, and I think that if you can live with Gattis behind the plate, knowing that's going to lessen the burden, especially in September and October, on McCann, maybe you do that. But this is someone who had 84 games last season. This is someone who didn't hit 400 plate appearances. I really start to worry. And as someone who bought in last year to the take Evan Gattis, hope he finds his way to 450 to 500, accept that for what you'll lack in some of the counting statistics, you know, from an average perspective, he'll at least be fine. And, you know, for as much as you want a catcher to have X amount of plate appearances, some catchers you realize, you know, Mike Zunino, who we'll talk about in a second, if I get 625 plate appearances from Mike Zunino, that's great for the home runs and the RBI.
And kills your average.
It's going to kill your average. It's going to slaughter it because of the volume of plate appearances he's getting. So there are ways to say, there are arguments to be made that maybe if you do have an everyday player in your fantasy lineup only getting 400 plate appearances, if it's the catcher, that's not the end of the world. I think that's a strategy better employed in a two-catcher league.
Yes.
In a one-catcher format, 12-man league,
there's just no need.
I'm not paying that price for Gattis.
Yeah.
I know the lineup's fantastic. I know the upside. Again, if McCann pulls up lame in spring training, the upside is infinite. It's top 3 upside, maybe even ahead of Buster Posey upside, depending on how you want to build your categories around your catcher. Again,
that seems extreme.
I'm just in terms of the counting stats.
Because it's not like he's going to play every day anyway if McCann is in.
No,
they're going to have to bring someone else in to catch.
They'll have to bring someone else in, but I still think you're going to have him catch, let's say, 11 of every 14 games. And at that point, you're getting 550 to 575 plate appearances, and this is someone who's probably going to challenge for 30 home runs and 100 RBI because Gattis, when he plays, hits 4th or 5th in that lineup. I mean, these are premium order positions. Again, that's all hypothetical. Dealing with what we have right now, I don't see it. I'm not buying in again this year to get burned on just the lack of volume from Evan Gattis. But two-catcher leagues are a whole different story.
All right, so Mike Zunino.
Yeah.
Is he going to hit above 200?
He might.
Well, that's a positive.
He might.
Last season he hit 251, and his BABIP was 355.
Yeah,
but he hits a ton of fly balls, so...
Yeah, these things don't add up.
Something's off.
Something's off, yes. Now, he does hit the ball hard.
That's
so
good.
Generally speaking, that does help your BABIP a little bit, but...
Like, is he going to go over 25 home runs? Because if he doesn't, he doesn't...
Yeah, he should. If he gets the playing time, he should. Like, Mike Zunino has always been a power guy. The one thing that's kind of different in his conversation in terms of the Gattis stuff is Mike Zunino is a fantastic defensive catcher, and they want to have him behind the plate as much as possible. And I think as an organization, they're happy that they didn't completely swing and miss on this pick. Like, Zunino looked like a draft bust.
He was 3rd overall?
I believe he was 2nd overall. Second or 3rd out of Florida. But he, for a time there, seemed like he just wasn't going to be a major league player. And he had this, was sent down last year, came back up. And when he came back up for about a month, he was hitting the cover off the ball. That dissipated a little bit in terms of, the September numbers. But the power was always there. I don't think, though, he's going to have a premium spot in this order. You're probably looking at him hitting 7th or 8th most of the season, so that's going to affect your run totals. It's going to affect your RBI.
But how many catchers really hit in premium spots in lineups?
Not many. So I do think that Zunino is someone who deserves to be drafted. I think that Zunino is someone who, coming into the season, I was fine with his price point. But he's the type of player, when his ADP starts rising, I start thinking there's another guy out there. Like, I think Wellington Castillo, who is going to have all the plate appearances he could possibly want with the White Sox, and is probably going to be doing it hitting either in front of or directly behind Jose Abreu. I think that's the kind of guy you might want to invest in a little bit more if Zunino's price point gets too high, because he's not the type of player who I'm willing to say, oh yeah, he could hit 250 again, and that would justify the numbers. Like, if you're paying for Zunino from last season, you can't pay that price, because the average is going to be sitting around 220. Like, Steamer has him at 228, I think. That might be generous. Lofty? Yeah. That might be generous. I mean, Mike Zunino is...
And it comes back to the thing, too, that if he is playing all the time, then you have to stomach the 228 average over the long sample.
It's going to pummel your average.
It's like what we talked about with Kershaw in terms of his ERA and WHIP. If he doesn't get to 200 innings, he's only pitching 150, it just doesn't have the same sort of impact over all your totals, where someone hitting 550 plate appearances, hitting 220, is not helping things.
No.
You need Jose Altuve to balance that out.
I mean, look, with extra time in the majors, maybe the strikeout rate comes down a little bit. Like, we've seen guys adjust their strikeout rate, but at the same time, like,
we've seen guys. Most guys do not.
This guy
adjust.
is Chris Davis wearing a catcher's mask, and if you're fine with that type of player, because he's not going to get the plate appearances as a catcher, so
if you gave him 650 plate appearances, would he hit 50 home runs?
No, but he does have...
Chris Davis went through a stretch where he was like the best home run hitter in baseball.
Yeah, that's over now. I meant he was Chris Davis last season wearing a catcher's mask. I mean, and again, if you look at the way we right now value Chris Davis...
Wait, which Chris Davis? Chris with the C or Chris with the K?
Chris with the C.
Okay.
The worst Chris Davis now, which is weird to say from a 4 years ago perspective. But like, the way we value Chris Davis now, Crush Davis, is... like, no value. He's someone who you can pick up at the last pick of your draft this year. Like, he's kind of a good sleeper because you don't have to pay anything for him. But when you're starting to pay top value dollar, I know the catcher, the fact he's got that little C next to his name, that gives him so much more value.
If you threw out the average draft position on Gattis, Zunino, and you talked about Wellington Castillo, would you just take Castillo above them, or is he just such a better value that that's why you would go to him?
I think it's close, honestly. I mean, Gattis is the best player of the three, but the playing time concerns are just too much. Yeah. There could be an argument to be made. So the fact it's even close, because those guys are definitely on the same tier. So as we talk about all the time, just take the one that's the cheapest.
And it's going to be Wellington.
It's going to be Wellington.
Who's going, what, like 50, 60 picks after?
I can check for you right now.
Yeah, you check
I think he was around pick 200.
So like 141 for Gattis, 153 for Zunino, and around pick 200 for Wellington Castillo?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Catcher.
Thrilling stuff.
I know.
Shouldn't have given you that iPad.
He's going at 175.
175, so he's going 25 to 35 picks later.
All good. I'm fine with that.
It's two rounds.
Wait
That's two, 3
rounds.
Yeah. And you can see who else is going in that territory and just pluck one.
Yeah, but that's around the danger zone for catcher, though. Like, unless you start wanting to take chances with, like, oh, Kurt Suzuki might actually get the timeshare this year. That's games you don't really want to play.
So is, like, Castillo the bottom of the tier, then?
When looking at my early catcher rankings, he's kind of like... I probably am not willing to go past this point.
Where is he at in those rankings? Like 10?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of
10.
sense.
So yeah, just make sure you grab one. Once you get outside that top 10, this has been the way it's been forever.
Yeah.
Just make sure.
Get someone who's stable.
Maybe have like an emergency plan, a plan F, but you don't want to get to plan F at catcher.
The last of the ADP risers at the top 5, Gerrit Cole, who we touched on in the ranking show, I think.
Briefly.
I know Vlad was talking about him a little bit. Because he switched teams. 92 to 74 in terms of ADP. Is this just the Houston effect?
I think so. I think it's...
Oh, he only won 12 games last year. Now he's with Houston. He's going to win 30.
I mean, look, I love the dumb guy voice. I use it a lot. I think it's fair to assume that a guy who's pitching in Houston for a team that's probably going to win around 100 games, I think it's fair to assume that this guy's going to win more games. And I can see why people would get more excited about Gerrit Cole. But Cole's been someone who...
Doesn't Houston kind of alleviate some of the problems they have with their pitchers? Like, hey, we got so many pitchers. Let's use 7 in the rotation this month.
Well, that's the problem.
And then it kills his innings?
So that would be the worry. Because Cole did throw 203 innings last season. So he, much like Verlander, who's in a similar position here, is someone...
It's actually pronounced...
Verlander?
Verlander.
Oh, Verlander.
Verlander!
That is fancier. Cole is someone who you can generally expect and pencil in to be someone who's an innings eater. But I do think the Astros are going to try, much like the Dodgers, to milk this system. So I don't know. I think that there will be points when his innings are affected. I still think you can give him 30 starts. I think if he's healthy, they're going to want to use him as much as they can.
Oh, yeah, 30 starts. That means he's going to go 30-0 on the Astros.
Might happen. Might happen. But... you know, there are some things about his season where you go, okay, this should normalize as well. Like, the home run to fly ball ratio numbers were ridiculous. When you look in comparison to the rest of his career, not someone who was, you know, adverse to giving up home runs, but had done really well suppressing opposing power. Home runs per 9. Like, the spike last season compared to everything else. And I realized that there was the narrative last year of just power going up throughout baseball. But... the way it went up, the heights he reached in terms of those numbers, I would expect those to come down next season. But at the same time, the strikeout numbers, because Cole, we're not unfamiliar with Gerrit Cole being someone who's going near the top 75. This is someone who, when he was with Pittsburgh, was...
Has he ever paid off a top 75 price?
And that's
ever?
the thing. He's not a fundamentally... he's not someone who you look at his repertoire and go, oh, this guy's a strikeout pitcher. I don't want to say he's Joe Kelly because he's not Joe Kelly, but
Doesn't Joe Kelly like sneaky throw like 99?
This is the thing. Like, they're Joe Kellys, your Nate Eovaldi's of the world, where you sit there and go, oh, this guy throws 99 miles an hour. He's going to strike out everyone. And then you realize he doesn't have a single pitch to finish an at-bat. Guys will sit there and foul off the fastball 6-7 times because he doesn't have a slider to go to. He doesn't have this devastating curveball. Like, you look at his O-swing percentage and his swinging strike rate. They're not everything. It's not the be-all, end-all. There are guys who have proven. I mean, Luke Weaver hasn't done it for a long period of time, but he's another guy who throws really hard, had a lot of strikeouts, but the swinging strike rate wasn't quite there. Trevor Bauer also kind of in that similar class, but he's been doing it for a lot longer and has sabermetrics on his side.
He does, and long toss.
And drones. But there's not a whole lot of validity to even Gerrit Cole striking out 8.6 batters per 9 like he did last season. And 8.6 batters per 9 is not this crazy number anymore. That's, I don't know, 45th best in baseball. Like, that's that.
And it could drop.
And it could drop.
It has a better chance to drop than actually go up.
Yeah, and I think to have, again, there's things aside from strikeouts. Gerrit Cole is someone who, you know, his whip probably won't be terrible. He's got pretty good control. He's never going to walk a lot of guys.
He was 125 last year.
Yeah,
whip.
but it's not crazy because
that's not good either.
I mean, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's fine. But I'm just saying, like, you could look at him and go, okay, he doesn't walk a lot of guys. Maybe he has a lucky BABIP season. Maybe that helps his whip just a little bit. I just feel like so many things come back to strikeouts, and so many things are assisted by strikeouts, and I just don't think those are legit. And for as much as, like, the run differential between leagues has kind of been proven to be a bit of a fallacy the last couple of years. Like, you can't just say, oh, this guy's moving from the National League to the American League. That's going to hurt him.
Yeah, but that was easier.
Well, I know it was.
Yeah.
But the NL's not anymore.
Well, I mean, it's still easier to say. If I just believe it, maybe
maybe wish it into existence.
Maybe I can just live my truth, and that's how it will be.
I mean, it's 2018. You live your truth. You be the best version of you can be. But I still do think there is some validity to the just, oh, he has to face a real batter every single time. Like, maybe he only faced the pitcher twice a game, but that's still twice a game.
Well, maybe he's not concentrated on hitting anymore. Maybe that's the part that we overlook.
Really pinpoint his focus on
yeah, he's just like, oh man, I'm really stressed out about having to hit. Now I can just focus on pitching.
Possibly. But Gerrit Cole was someone who, even back in his quote-unquote prime with Pittsburgh, when he was setting up to be a top 10 guy, and everyone was like, this guy's just on the horizon. Like, he's going to take that next step. I just never got into him anyway. So I don't, again, he's a guy who maybe at his price point when it was around pick 100, I could go, yeah, sure. I could buy any Gerrit Cole at that level.
30 wins, why not?
As soon as his price point starts going up.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the table. But as soon as Gerrit Cole and types of players like Gerrit Cole see their numbers go up a little bit and that ADP rise, I just don't really want any part of that. I feel like there's better guys behind him, and there's guys who might have higher ceilings behind him.
Like?
They're just at that tier.
Well, now that's up a tier, too. That's
true. Now we're up around pick 75. I mean, look, even someone like, I'm not in love with Luis Castillo because he is also getting this huge helium effect.
Also, he's like a 400-pound second baseman, so it'd be tough for him to be a pitcher. There's a new Luis Castillo. Oh, okay.
Although this guy was a Marlins prospect.
That's really confusing.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is.
He's not a bowling ball-shaped switch-hitting second baseman?
He's very live, and he's very good at pitching. His problem is more just innings projection, but I think he's got better stuff. I trust his strikeout ability a whole lot more, and he's still going around pick 100, which might be a little crazy.
You think that might be too high?
When you start looking at him in a vacuum, you're like, he's going to need to throw 175 to 190 innings to get to there, and I don't know if he's going to do that, but I still think the first 150 innings are going to be a whole lot better with Luis Castillo than they'd be with Gerrit Cole. So I feel like you're paying for name value and team value here, which is fine. Team value is a thing.
Okay, let's talk about team value then. In terms of the Astros, how do you fantasy rank their starting staff? Like Verlander's number 1.
Yeah.
Is McCullers better than Cole?
He's got the chance to be. I think he's got better stuff.
And where's he going?
He's going around pick 1. He's actually going in a strange sort of place right now. Like, he's towards the middle of like pick 160 to pick 180, depending if you're going NFBC or Fantrax.
So you can get him for more than double the rounds of Gerrit Cole.
And
it's a bit riskier, obviously.
It's riskier. He's got injury history. He's someone who I think this is kind of the reason that when you talk about Cole and Verlander and whether or not the Astros are going to put baby gloves on with them, is there might be more pressing issues. Like, they might not be able to give Verlander and Cole a break because they have to give someone like McCullers a break. Because they have to give Brad Peacock, who's transitioned from the bullpen to the rotation back and forth his entire career, he might actually need the break. He might really need to use the DL.
Hey, he was Pat Mayo's streaming favorite Brad Peacock last year.
He was great.
5 innings, 11 Ks.
He was fantastic. But again, when you have guys who...
What about Keuchel then?
Oh, Keuchel's great too.
Is he going as high as Gerrit Cole is?
No, he's not going as high as Gerrit Cole is. I think he's going around pick 120. I can check this out too. But
so again, you're getting a better value on that. It just seems like Gerrit Cole's a bit overvalued to me.
I think people still look at the name Gerrit Cole and remember the conversations we were having 3 years ago and think that Gerrit Cole is going to be this amazing guy, but he's just never struck guys out.
You know what a conversation we had about Gerrit Cole 3 years ago?
Tim loves Gerrit Cole.
We were on the show. Tim predicted him to win the NL Cy Young.
He did.
And he has not been the same since. That boy ain't right.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple strange seasons, but I just think at the price point, like you're saying, if you want a piece of the Astros, well, right now Keuchel's going in that same tier, so he's going at 77.3. But Keuchel, I think, is someone who has a similar, even if you go back to last season, the strikeouts are pretty similar. And I think Keuchel's proven over a longer period of time that he's never going to be an over strikeout per inning type guy. But the way that people think Cole can just become that all of a sudden, even though he's never really done it, I'm not buying into it. And I think Keuchel brings other elite things to the table where I look at Cole and go, this guy's a really good pitcher, but I don't think he's great in any single aspect. Like, Keuchel, you start looking at, like, launch angle and stuff like that.
Ooh.
Like, 94 qualified pitchers last season had 450 batters faced, or at least 450 batters faced. And Keuchel was, not only were there only 5 guys to have an average opposing launch angle below 5 degrees, Keuchel's was the only one that was negative. Like, it is so hard to barrel up Dallas Keuchel. The ground ball rate is going to be immaculate. He's someone who's going to work deep into games. The same win expectancy is there. So even at that same tier.
But he didn't win 30 games last year.
Well, he was hurt last year.
Oh, so that's why he didn't win 30.
I know. So, like, if everything lines up, if everything's just in the world, he'll win 27 games this year. But I think at that tier, I'd much rather have Dallas Keuchel over a guy like Gerrit Cole.
All right, let's talk about a few fallers. I'll move the bus and sleepers to another mini episode.
Sure.
Let's split those up, get double the clicks. And remember to give the episode a like, by the way, people. That always goes a long way in helping everything out. So the guys that are falling right now in terms of ADP, Michael Conforto from 165 to 197. Why?
Injury. That's pretty much all it is.
How long, though?
The last I saw, I think he was definitely going to miss time off the top. So if you're already talking about not playing in April, that's a little tough. I like Conforto. Like, I think if he was healthy, he was someone who you probably could have expected to be a riser this year in terms of ADP, not only because he plays in such a public market. I mean, Mets fans love this guy, but yeah, won't be ready till the beginning of May was the last update. That was a week ago.
So what do you do with those types of players then?
I don't think it's terrible to try and grab these guys.
Because you can put them on your DL.
You can slot them on your DL. It's fine. You can even just, depending on the bench size in your league, like it's not terrible to have someone like Conforto, especially in baseball. I know April specifically, the way they kind of dole out the schedule, there's a lot more off days in April than any other month because they realize they're going to have to make up so many games because of inclement weather. So unlike, the middle of August, where very rarely are you, unless you're playing the matchups, very rarely are you even utilizing your bench in a daily moves league because no one ever has the day off in baseball. April is a little tougher. You do like to use your bench guys in that month because so many teams do have days off, but that's such a minor thing to ever think about.
Well, the weird thing with the new DL rule coming in last year was, you could stash one of these guys away. It's like, oh, I can put two of these guys in my DL for months at a time. But then all of a sudden you have like 6 guys on the DL.
There were a lot of guys on the DL last year. And that's the thing. That'll sneak up on you too. I mean, Conforto, he's always been loved by hard contact rate. He's someone who does have immense power. Not
beloved in New York.
He is beloved in New York. But little to no speed to talk about. So he's already a 4-cat player. And he's someone who, when you start, again, projecting plate appearances, he's never really been able to hit left-handed pitching all that well.
Okay.
So, the Mets are a team that aren't necessarily blessed with talent. So it's not even necessarily that there's a situation where he might not. I'm not saying he has to play against lefties because they do have guys. Like, the way their infield is constructed right now, there are some quality right-handed bats they have on their bench who they might give looks to in the corner outfield slots. But Conforto might find himself not hitting against lefties, which already is now taking a guy who's a 4-cat player and alleviating some of the volume that would be great for 3 of the remaining 4 categories. So there are flaws to the game here. But with the injury, let's see how far he drops. If he starts getting to like 225-ish.
Well, he's at 197 right now, so that seems to be where he's going to end up falling to.
Yeah. So he's probably someone who, when that price point gets past pick 200, maybe you start considering him.
Okay.
But I don't know. There are a lot of flaws in his game.
Greg Holland from 127 to 148.
Just no longer a closer.
But why is he still going at 148 then?
I think. I mean, maybe it's just, I'm not sure what site these numbers are for. I think they're for Fantrax. But I guess there's still like the strikeout upside.
Well,
let
me ask you
Holland
this.
Is like
Greg Holland, who does he even play for? Is he with the Rockies? Was Greg Holland the one who was going to retire?
I mean, I think, was he going to retire? He had that I guess he had that massive injury when he was with the Royals. And he lost a full season.
I'm going to look this up on Twitter. Because I feel like he said he might end up retiring.
Not this season, because he was coming off a really good season with the Rockies. Has he signed yet? Maybe he hasn't signed yet.
Cardinals will sign.
Cardinals,
says Cardinals will sign him. 2 years, $25 million. What?
He had a good season last year. The walks were up. The walks were way up for Holland last year.
So is there any chance of him being the closer without injury in St. Louis?
Well, I mean, O's not coming back. Rosenthal's not coming back.
So he could be?
I guess he could be.
If you're going to pay him that kind of money.
His second half last year was terrible. And this gets into like weird territory of how much stock can you really ever put into, I mean, splits in general, but like specifically reliever splits. Because if you start breaking it down, he had like a 7-game run where he gave up multiple earned runs in like 5 of the 7 games. And at that point, you could pitch your next 15 appearances essentially perfect, and your ERA is still screwed. So I think Holland, there's a chance he could win this job. I have my question marks about his age. I have my question marks about his velocity. He is a pitcher who's prone to give up home runs. Obviously, leaving Colorado helps a little bit. But I could see why people would be scared off a little bit because of the numbers in the second half. And again, because the walks were just so prevalent with Greg Holland. And if there's one thing you ask someone coming into the ninth to do, generally speaking.
Just hit a home run if you have to. Just don't walk anyone.
Just try not to walk anybody.
All right. How about Mike Moustakas hasn't signed yet?
Hasn't signed yet.
But he's not going to go unsigned.
Yeah, I guess it's just if he remains with the Royals, and I think that's the perception is the longer he remains unsigned, the more likely it is he'll just end up back with the Royals.
Well, he dropped from pick 107 to pick 127.
Yeah.
Is there a spot where do you just gamble on him potentially signing elsewhere?
I think it's
at 127.
I even think if he signs with the Royals, like I guess the argument you're creating for yourself if he signs with the Royals is that that lineup's just going to be awful. But
I know they're two different positions, but based on where they're going right now, would you rather have Moustakas, even if he does end up signing back with the Royals, but we don't know right now, so the variable of him like going to Colorado or something.
Yeah. Not Colorado. They have a third baseman.
Sure, but that's still out there.
Sure.
That he could go to a favorable situation, or he can go back to the Royals, and that's sort of like his floor of destination where he could go at 127, or would you rather have Acuna?
I think I'd rather have Moustakas.
So he's going later, so
yeah,
this is a good trend then.
I think there's just definitive power numbers. I mean, again, you're not going to get the speed with Moustakas, so the Acuna thing is like the perfect storm in terms of him being
hype plus situation.
A hyped prospect by every single site, and the fact that everyone's top 100 rankings have come out within the last month, and he's been either number 1 or number 2 on every single list, and the fact that we're looking for speed, and he's a guy who can bring you that element. But I like Moustakas a lot, and I do think that Royals lineup, for as bad as it might be, I mean, there's a chance that Whit Merrifield's their best player on opening day. Like, it could be a really bad situation for the offensive players in that lineup.
Does this make you happy?
I don't like the Royals.
Seeing the Royals be bad?
I guess. They were bad last season, though, so I was okay with that. It's fine. Like, there's not a whole lot to say about Moustakas. He just is what he is, which is a compliment. Like, I think the fact you can pencil in Moustakas for like 270, 32, with this Royals team, maybe like 80-80.
That doesn't seem so bad.
That's fine. It's fine. And I guess that maybe is one of the reasons why people have taken this opportunity where he does not have a team to get a little underwhelmed, because he's never going to be someone who's like a sexy pick. No one's picking Mike Moustakas and going like, oh, I just got the steal of the draft. But he's a perfectly fine player, and he's someone who I think is a very formative piece in like the 7th round.
All right, big Ervin Santana.
Kind of just is what he is.
He's dropped 20 spots. He's going outside the top 200 now.
I mean, there might be some weird news about him, but like for Santana, he was just someone who was well outperforming his numbers from last season. It wasn't really hard to see through it. It was a very...
But he continued to outperform those numbers for like 70% of the season, didn't he?
He's good. Let's see, follow up on his surgically repaired right hand. Currently in cast, expect to miss 10. There you go. So could miss the first month of the 2018 season.
All right, so just don't draft him. Pick him up if he's coming back.
I would say that if someone is out there willing to give a DL spot or a bench spot to Ervin Santana,
Who's the better bench stash, Conforto or Santana? It's Conforto, right?
I would say Conforto because the upside's a lot higher. I just feel like at this point, if you're already going to allot a bench spot to like player X who's just a wild card, pick someone with a much higher ceiling than Ervin Santana.
Big Ervin Santana.
Like, he could have a nice ratios season because he seems to do that, every other year. But I just think there are guys with higher upside out there who, you could just, with the last pick of your draft, just maybe shoot a little bit higher.
Aim higher. Aim for the stars with this stuff.
There's, Ervin Santana's just Ervin Santana.
He's like 50 years old, I want to say.
35.
He's only 35? Did he start pitching when he was like 20? When was his first season?
Sense. Let's see.
Like his first season in the majors.
I'm going to say it was like 2004.
I guess that would be 14 years ago.
2005.
2005?
Yeah.
He just seems like he's been around forever.
Yeah.
And he has.
I mean, he's been on relatively prominent teams. Like, he's done well for himself.
Yeah.
His name's out there a lot. There was that rumor that a bunch of players one season tried to like put their own money together to sign him. I think it was the Blue Jays. Batista and Edwin wanted to sign him so badly, they were like, we'll put our own money together and sign him.
And then they probably complain about how much money they're not getting paid.
It's possible.
All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Those are ADP risers and fallers. Stick around for some busts, some sleepers to help you out. In the early rounds, who to avoid. In the late rounds, who to take. Makes a lot of sense. You can follow Garion on Twitter at Garion Thorne. You can follow me at the PME, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Audio Boom, others that have podcasts where you can download them, and the video version always up on the DraftKings YouTube page. Give the episode a like, sub, rate the pod, and go back and check out the previous fantasy baseball shows to get you ready for the fantasy baseball season. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this year. I'll see you next time.